like, so I went and did that, and I was like back working with him and just back at Cotogna, and like just being back in that building. I was like, shit, I want to be back here, and I remember it was like my last day of like the time I had to be there. And I'm super fortunate, and I don't take it for granted, like my relationship with Tusk. Like, he's been there for me for a lot of things, like even when he doesn't have to be. And like I get so much from him, and I've learned so much from him, and it's like put me in such good spots. Like, when I was there and it was like ending, I was like, I'm not done working with you. Like, I want to work with you some more. Like, is there a position for me, or is there something? And he's like, let me see if I can put something together. And like a week goes by, and he goes, why don't you be the purchasing chef for the company?
Oh shit!
I was like, oh, okay.
So
I was like,
gig.
Yeah, like more like I was definitely a part of the. I was involved in all the restaurants. So like in the sense, corporate style. So like, I was in like the admin section, is what they called me.
Yeah.
But it was great because
I'm gonna stop.
Go ahead, chef.
All right, so Tusk offered me the purchasing chef position, and he kind of billed it as like I would be obviously in charge of like ordering everything for all the restaurants, but then like being in charge of like getting good prices and things like that. So I got to. It was more of like I was going to learn the business side of things, which is what I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And being in a place where I understood the philosophies and everything, like, it was like, what better position was there going to be, you know? So I took it. And, like, what was great is, so much of, like, my career and everything, like, was influenced by these chefs that I work with, my CDCs and sous chefs and things like that. But, I remember being meeting with Lindsay Tusk, and she's like, Mary Young, at that point, as the director of finance, she's like, she's going to be super important to you. Like, you need to learn everything you can from her. And I did, and she's taught me so much. Like, that experience was so incredible because, like, learning how to read a P&L, and that's what I wanted to get to. I mean, a lot of, like, for me, it's like, I don't need to know everything, but, like, I want to know enough where, like, I can teach people, or, like, I also, like, don't have to rely, I don't have to be hostage to anybody else, like, am I the best pastry chef? No, but like I know how to make an ice cream. If I need to make an ice cream or make a dessert, I can do it.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things about working as the purchasing chef was like, there was times every week we'd have financial meetings with the CDCs, and I was kind of like a co-pilot. It wasn't like I was in charge of the meeting the budgets and all those things, but also like I wasn't writing the menus and things like that. I was just like sending out updates and being like, hey, this is coming, this is in season, this is coming out, like, you guys got to change this menu or whatever, like, kind of things like that. But, if the food purchases were out of line, it was my fault, right? Not that it's my fault, but it was my responsibility to keep them in line. And I just remember, like, being in those meetings and Tusk being able to sit down and being like, this fish, these Cotogna fish purchases are out of line, like, what's going on, and, like, being able to look at a P&L and like seeing the number and then putting it together and like going through the GL and like looking through and being like, why is it messed up? And it was like that week it was like we got double booked on the same invoice, and it was like, oh, okay, like I need to get to that point where I can look at a number and be like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And that it's like out of line.
You can identify problems.
Yeah.
From just looking at a number.
So it was a great experience, and I like, that's what I took away the most was like, and also building relationships with farmers. I mean, at that point, like, we were pretty fresh into working with Fresh Run Farm.
Yeah.
Like, directly. And then, every January we'd sit down with Peter Martinelli and, like, go over what we wanted to, like, grow, what worked, what didn't work. And then there's only so much space at that farm that we then reached out to other farmers. Like, I met incredible farmers like Jenny and Vince Schroeder, who are up at Kibo in the Sonoma Mountains. And they, like, Tusk had gone to Mexico, and he wanted baby corn, right? Because, like, he wanted a canapé for Quince. And it was like, well, Peter's land was already maxed out for what Quince and Cotogna needed and what we planned. And so I reached out to Jenny and Vince, and they grew it for us. And it was it was new for them and it was new for us, and it turned out great. And like those kinds of relationships were super huge.
That's awesome.
You know, yeah, it's, and I still talk to him like every January. I sit down with Jenny and Vince and go over like what worked and what didn't work, and like what do we want to see next year. And like for me, that's what I learned the most. It was like building on like, okay, we go to the farmers markets and pick up stuff, but then like what else can we do, or how much deeper can we create this relationship and like get really incredible products, or you know, get a farmer who's just as excited about a product as we are, or a lot of it too, like, you know, I have the same tattoo artist, and like there's ideas I have, but it's like I don't want to limit the idea.
Artist is the artist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So farmers too, it's like, hey, these are what I want, but like what do you want to grow? Like I don't want to dictate everything you're doing. Like if you're excited about it, I'm gonna be just as excited.
Exactly.
You know.
Yep.
So,
and then how long did you do that job for?
So I was there for almost 2 years.
Okay.
Doing that, and it was, you know, from there I took another private chefing job, because at that point, like, it's not that I'd learned everything from Tusk, but I felt like, you know, for me, it was time to move on. It was time to kind of like keep on growing, and like he had his CDCs, like, you know, Neil Stetz, who's still there, and then Victoria Yang, who's the CDC of Cotogna. Like, he had them, and like, not that I didn't have room to grow or anything, but it was like, I think it's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
You know, I had spent like a long time with him and learned so much from him, and it was just time to move on. And I took a job, a private chefing gig at a ranch, and it didn't really work out. So it was like, I was there for like a month, I think, in this ranch in Wyoming, and then I came back, and like, because it didn't really work out, and I was supposed to be there until I think October or something.
Where in Wyoming?
In Cody, Wyoming.
How'd you get the
so
job?
it was through the truffle shuffle guys.
No fucking way.
Yeah, which is really great, and they're great. Like, the truffle shuffle guys are like, their personalities are perfect, right? Like they're like, they're great for what they're doing. They're doing these live streams and things like that, and I think that like, for me, I'm just like totally different. Like, I'm a little bit more like, I don't know, just like not as outgoing, or I don't even think I'm that fun, you know? Like,
what year was this?
This was 2019.
2000. Okay.
Yeah. So they were just like starting out. Like, I think they had, you know, and this was someone they put me in contact with, and you know, it just didn't work out, because a lot of too, like, what's hard for me is like, it's really difficult for me to cook whatever, right? Like, I took the job because, like, and again, this was an issue. I took the job because the money was good, and I like needed to kind of like build myself back up and kind of figure out what I was going to do next. So I needed like a nest egg,
for sure. But
then, like, you know, and nothing against it. Like, there's people for it, right? There's people who can do these things, and there's a kitchen for everyone. That's my philosophy.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really inspired going to like Albertsons and getting like a week's worth of produce and things like that. Even though like I could ship in a whole bunch of things, there was just like, it was hard for me to, I don't really get inspired that way. You know, like, I like going to the market or walking the farms and, and doing those kinds of things. So
you
like,
definitely have to shut a part of yourself down to do that job. How long did you last?
So it's like a month.
And then you were like, I can't do this?
No, we just came to terms like it wasn't going to work out, because also like, he was like, oh, I really like Italian food, and I did this like super traditional, not super traditional, but like a traditional like Roman thing. But he was just like, I just want like linguine with like chili flake and garlic, and I was like, well, why don't you just tell me that? Like, I just did all these other things, and like, I don't have to do that. Like, you know. So it, you know, and it was cool. It was a good, for me, it was good because when I was a purchasing chef, I wasn't in the kitchen every day. There was times when I opened up Quince or help people out or do events and stuff like that, but it was good to cook every day.
Got you.
So that's also why I took the job too. I mean, the money was good, but you know, but it's like, it didn't really work out, and like it cut early, and I remember being like, shit, okay, I'm driving back to Wyoming, or from Wyoming, and at that point I was like, I was going to go back to SoCal and just be with my family, but then I was like, no, I need to get something going, because I literally don't know what the fuck I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So I called Tusk because I was like, hey, just a heads up, like, it didn't work out in Wyoming, and I don't want you to find out that I'm like in SF, even though I told you I was going to be there till October. I don't want you to like. I don't want to ruin our relationship thinking you just left and like fucked off and stuff like that. And so he's like, oh, okay, like what happened? Told him, and he's like, well, why don't you just come to LA with me and like we're doing an event, big event. And I was like, okay, and like. We had done one earlier that year where I drove down the transit, like our transit with everything down there. So I went and did it, and it was 2 nights. So the second night, like a lot of people came and helped us, and that second night, Chris Kroner came and helped us. And I've never met him before, but him and Tusk are super good friends, and we hit it off like that night where he was like helping me out with this artichoke salad dish I was responsible for, and he was like helping me plate it. And then we go to like the Prince in Koreatown afterwards, and then like I wasn't working for Tusk at that point, so like I was just there helping out. And
you can get wild.
Yeah, and Kroner was like, yo, let's go get like tacos. And I was like, dude, let's go. And so we were talking, and he goes, what do you want to do? And I was like, right now I'm kind of like trying to figure it out. Like I think I want to, I was thinking about going to do my own pop-ups again and try to get my own thing going. And he's like, oh, cool. Give him a follow on Instagram, get a follow back. And then like things go on. I'm doing like mercenary work. I'm helping like Kim Alter at Nightbird and Nopa and things like that, and just trying to stay cooking. And then one day, like, social media nowadays, like Chris put up this story and I like reacted to it like a fire emoji or something. And
how
he goes,
pedestrian of you.
Yeah, I know, just a fire emoji. And then he hits me back and he goes, hey, Tartine's looking for a chef. And I was like, SF or LA? And he goes, SF. And I was like, cool, put me in contact. And then like shortly after, like Chad Robertson emails me and he's like, hey, Chris Kroner gave me your contact and all that stuff. And he was gone, but then I met with Scott Boggs at the time, was his VP of operations, and then this other chef, Josh Drew, and I met them at the 9th Avenue location. We're interviewing, and a lot of what they wanted to do was like, they wanted the food to. They just wanted to be more of like a restaurant, right? Like, without saying what was happening before, there was just some things that needed to be cleaned up, like in the P&L and business-wise, and then food-wise, like they were ready for something new, and the chef had already put in their notice. Yeah. And like they were trying, like anytime somebody leaves, they're trying to like, you have the chance to do what you wanted to do or what you want to do in the future, right? Exactly. And you're finding that person who's going to help you get there. So it worked out perfectly. Like, I mean, everything that they wanted aligned with like what I was trying to do. Like, I knew I wanted to cook again, but then I had all this knowledge that I needed to keep going, right? You need to keep working out that muscle. So like, being the purchasing chef and doing all the P&Ls and things like that, I felt very comfortable jumping in as the chef of the Tartine Manufactory and being able to clean it up and look at what they're doing, because it was very similar in the sense that like they had multiple businesses, just like Quince, Cotogna, and Verjus, but like some things got muddled at like on P&Ls and things weren't represented correctly. But then also the food, like it allowed me, because of like, and I knew like working with Chad, it was like, I just knew that like if you worked at Tartine as a chef, like you got a chance to put your stamp on it. Like you look at Nick and Courtney who did Bar Tartine, and they did like these incredible like things with fermentation and really took Bar Tartine to the next level. But even the chefs before that, like Kroner has Kroner Burger and things like that. So I knew it was a really good platform to be able to do like figure out my style.
And now you were, for the first time, the chef of a restaurant.
Yeah, which was.
And your family's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, fuck yeah, and I'm like, oh shit. No, I felt really ready, because at that point, like, I had the knowledge. And then also, there was times where I fucked up enough where, like, I know I'm not to go in and, like, come in hot and let's, like, change everything or do all this crazy shit, right? Like, so.
Slow down.
Slow down and really, like, teach people and learn. Yeah. So I felt, like, very lucky, or felt very fortunate to have the opportunity. Like getting the job was crazy, because like I remember like I met with Chad and he's like, oh, let's do a tasting, and I was like, okay, and like he's like, but I don't want to do it at the Manufactory because it's just too busy, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week. Yeah. And like again, like there's people in your life that does like help you out a lot, and like Kim Alter is one of those people, the chef at Nightbird. She's amazing. And I remember reaching out to her and being like, hey, can I use Nightbird to do a tasting for Chad because they're closed on Sunday, Mondays. And she goes, yeah, of course. Like, you know, she helped me set it up and do all these things. Like, it was great. And the tasting went off really well. And like, you know,